This is our last one about Wilson. This is the battle for suffrage, and in a nod to the late, great David Bowie, a great song for this might be Suffragette City. So, here we go. The suffrage movement has actually nothing to do with suffering. There's actually a whole bunch of videos out there where people go pull pranks and say, hey, do you want to end women's suffrage? And people will sign it. Suffrage is another word for the right to vote. Okay? So this is talking about how women gained the right to vote in this country, all right? And kind of taking you through that timeline. Now, I'm going back into the 1800s here before I come back, and here we go. The first place in 1848 was called the Seneca Falls Convention. This was basically set up so that women could address grievances that they felt they needed addressed. One of the biggest grievances in the Declaration of Sentiments is that they didn't feel that they were being treated as equals. Namely, they wanted the right to vote. Now, the Declaration of Sentiments, you can see we hold these truths to be self-evident. It draws a lot of parallelism to the Declaration of Independence, and rightfully so. They're trying to declare their independence from the way they've been treated. All right? Some important women. First off, we have is Lucretia Mott. Now, Lucretia became interested in women's rights when male co-workers were paid 3 times as much as she was. She's a co-founder of the Seneca Falls Convention, and she worked for more equality in marriage and divorce. So, big thing there is she's at that Seneca Falls Convention. She's organizing the women there. Another woman is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She's believed to be the driving force behind that convention and writing that Declaration of Sentiments. And so she's a fairly important woman. Now, next woman we have with suffrage and all this is Mother Jones. Now, Mother Jones was actually a champion of child labor. She was really good at organizing and getting pickets out, and so she kind of set the scene when women saw, okay, she can do this. Now, one of the big things she did was she actually took some children who'd been hurt on the job and marched them to the White House so that Teddy Roosevelt could see, hey, this is what's going on. It was so instrumental and it worked so well that, again, the women suffragettes, the ones fighting for the right to vote, said we can't write a sentiments, we can't tell them how we feel, we're going to have to do something a little more political. Now, Susan B. Anthony, she took this cry. She's actually going to start what's called NASA. When did she want the right to vote? NASA. I know that was a bad joke, but it's all right. It stands for National American Women's Suffrage Association. Susan B. Anthony is going to begin to picket, and she's going to begin to petition the government. And she was actually the one that used that populism quote I had there for you of organize, educate, and agitate. So she wants to get these things out, things like that, and she's still not as crazy about this and trying to get this, and still nothing's happening. Then we have Alice Paul. Now, Alice Paul famously was portrayed by Hilary Swank in a movie called Iron-Jawed Angels. And if you ever have time, watch that. It's really, really interesting. She actually pickets the White House. She tried to vote incognito, in disguise. She's thrown into jail. She's force-fed through tubes. There's a lot of things that happen with Alice Paul. Okay? And not just Alice Paul, but people like her. Finally, with these efforts of all these women together, the 19th Amendment was passed. And in a weird twist of fate, women actually had the right to vote in many, many states already. It just needed to be a formality, okay? So the 19th Amendment is about women's suffrage. It's a basic part of law. Now, how would I remember that? 19, prom queen. You vote for the prom queen, all right, and they both are women. There you go. Now, the last one we need to talk about is Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger is basically the one who came up with the whole idea of should birth control be legal. A lot of the early churches in this country felt that birth control was against God's plan, and there was a lot of things there. Margaret Sanger basically said, I'm a woman, I should be allowed to decide what happens with my body, and things like that. And so the birth control pill was actually made available thanks to her efforts, as well as Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood is actually the one that sponsors abortion clinics and things like that, and that gives rise to a whole wealth of other topics that we'll get into in the 1970s, and namely abortion. All right? So that was it about progressivism. The next videos to see are about imperialism.